Ladies, gentlemen, and miniatures of all ages, in Grounded 2 there are plenty of different ways to play the game. Last week we went over 5 incredibly powerful builds in Grounded 2's early access as it currently stands, and today we're going to go over another 5. Sadly, it's not going to be one per archetype this time, as we basically covered the only reasonable options for bows and candy staves last time, but don't worry, we have some both incredibly strong and incredibly fun builds in store for you today nonetheless. Before we start, I'll be showing mutations for each build in creative mode, just to show you the full unlocked effects so you know what's going on there, but the footage that I'm showing of them actually in use fighting bugs won't even have all of the mutations active, so they are incredibly potent even before you get to the point where everything's unlocked. First up then, let's talk about a setup that will make any melee weapon in the game feel extremely strong. It works with any melee weapon of any type, and its focus is just applying loads and loads of damage as well as getting free stuns at the start of combat. The main thing at the heart of this build setup is the Northern Scorpion armor set. This is made from Northern Scorpion materials. It has the Rogue Armor perk, which increases the crit chance of your 3-hit combo finisher with melee weapons. 6.5% increase for each piece of armor equipped for a total of 19.5% Venom damage increase from wearing the full 3 pieces. When you have all 3 pieces of the armor equipped at the same time, you also get a set bonus which is called Crippling Strike, which makes any ambush attacks with melee weapons become a guaranteed stun, meaning anything that you're able to sneak up on or anything that starts neutral before combat will just get absolutely ripped to shreds in mere moments of starting the fight. Then for your next steps, there are 2 options because the next thing you need to think about is weapons. The easy route would be to just use one of the few weapons that naturally applies Venom buildup as part of the weapon through a perk, but because we want this to be a big all-purpose melee weapon build that applies for everything really, we are instead going to say that the weapon slot is fully personal choice, use literally whatever you want, and the trinket has to be the Stabby Stinger. This is a random drop chance from Northern Scorpion enemies, the big adult ones, or you can increase this drop chance by making the stuffed Northern Scorpion trophy in your base and then rubbing it for luck. This trinket makes the finisher attack of your 3-hit combo with melee weapons apply Venom, and so any melee weapon, as long as you are doing 3-hit combos with it, can make this work, which then also combos very nicely with the Rogue Armor perk from the armor set and the Double Deal perk as well. For mutations for this one, it depends a bit on which weapon you're actually choosing to use, as you want the fighting style that matches it more than anything else, but then you also want the ambush perk ideally, as this set has solid ambush synergy. Then personally I'd go with Trapper Peeper if you've gotten the gold cards to get this, as even though you can only get to tier 2 at most right now, it is still a solid damage increase, increasing your critical hit damage. Then Cardio Fan, final priority for the stamina management, especially as your main goal is doing full length combos, which does eat through stamina a fair bit fairly quickly. Next up, let's talk about the fun that is fist weapons. Something that Grounded 2 does not make clear, but I've been trying to make sure people know about, is that the claw weapons under the dual wield category, being the Mighty Claws and the Northern Shredders, do not count as daggers or sickles for the assassin mutation. They instead actually count as fists, meaning that the Lil Fist mutation works with these weapons. And not only that, but also on top of that, it's actually quite strong when you do build around it properly. That said, there are only 2 sets of these claw fist weapons that you can currently make in the game, and one of them is notably stronger, which is the Northern Shredders. These are crafted from scorpion bits and caterpillar bits, but to unlock the recipe, you do need to go to this cave located here on your map, which you will be brought to in the story quite early on, but you may have missed that inside of the cave there is this piece of paper called the Cryptic Recipe, and if you interact with it, that's how you learn the recipe for these claws. For the armor set, there are 2 choices depending on how you want to take it. You can either go with the Snail armor set for charge attack synergy, which does work quite well, or you can instead go with the Northern Scorpion armor, which we just talked about in the last entry with the Rogue Armor perk and the Double Deal perk as well. The Snail armor would result in larger charged attacks, which is actually a pretty big deal for fist weapons if that is what you're after, but the Scorpion armor should result in more consistent high damage over longer periods of time, which is why I'm showing this with this here. Because we have the Venom application from the weapon itself, we do not need to use the Stabby Stinger trinket anymore, however, and instead we can pick up something a bit more fun in that slot, with my main recommendation being the Volatile Capacitor. This is unlocked for crafting at Brain Power level 9. This adds flat shock damage to every attack that you do while it's equipped, so every punch gets bonus damage, and as this is a fast attacking setup, we get a lot of value from flat damage. But it also gets an even further boost on charged attacks, unlike the other flat damage adding trinkets. The Haywire effect says that this only happens when you're hitting orc enemies, but it seems to me that whenever you hit a charged attack with this on, it does do even more shock damage than it would do with the regular hits, and it seems to do it in an AoE, so it seems to be having this activate just no matter what, which may not be intentional, but is quite strong regardless. And it also just works extremely well with the Little Fist mutation as a result, because that mutation's playstyle that it wants you to do is do lots and lots of combo attacks and then one massive charged attack anytime time you get the opportunity. Speaking of which, let's jump over to mutations for this build. The top priority by far is Lil Fist. The base bonus on this is that every hit with fist weapons gives you a stack of the Lil Fist buff. Each stack increases the damage of your next charged attack by 5% for tier 1, 7.5% for tier 2, or 10% for tier 3. You can get up to 15 stacks at a time before it stops growing, and you lose your stacks if you take damage from an attack, or if you of course spend them on using a charged attack itself. The tier 3 bonus is that all fist attacks apply bonus stun per hit, which is honestly fantastic in itself, but also it makes every fist hit generate 2 stacks of the Little Fist buff instead of only 1, which take this to a whole other level of strength once you have this part of it unlocked. Next priority I would say is Parry Master. As the way that the Little Fist mutation works, you need to either perfect block or fully dodge all attacks, or else you'll lose your stacks. If you take chip damage through a standard block, you lose your stacks. Parry Master gives you stamina back on perfect block, which not only gives you more stamina to play around with in general for stuff like dodging for burst movement, but it also lets you keep up your offense too by giving you more stamina to attack with. If you instead feel confident enough in your pure dodging ability, you can use the Frenzy mutation, which will increase your damage by a fairly large amount and give you some health regeneration, but remove your ability to perfect block entirely, which is very sort of high risk, high reward. After that is Cardio Fan for this build. Stamina is super important in this setup, and the extra stamina management from this mutation is fantastic. Then the final slot, if you have it unlocked, would be either Ambush when doing general combat out in the world, or against a non-ambushable enemy. You would instead want to swap that to Trapper Peeper if you have that unlocked for the crit damage that gives you from the Yoked Blows perk. Moving on to our next build today, let's talk about blocking to deal damage, which is maybe not the literal strongest option, but is a really fun playstyle that has a lot of things working together to make it function, and I think it's really interesting, even if you don't actually want to play it yourself. Specifically, the main focus of this is getting perfect blocks based around 2 different shields. For general combat options, the best one here is the Bomb Buckler, made from Bombardier materials, silk ropes, and caterpillar spine nubs. This is a light shield, so it only fully blocks damage if you perfect block, not on your regular blocks, but it also applies stun damage on perfect block as a base, and then the specific shield has the Spicy Parry perk. This makes it also apply 15 spicy damage when you get a perfect block, as well as 25 sizzle buildup, which importantly is a fair bit of extra damage over time. This means if you are someone who is good with your block timing and can get perfect blocks consistently, you can actually have genuine offensive gain applied through your shield. And because this one also applies sizzle specifically, it means the damage will linger and apply over time in between your blocks as well, even if the enemy isn't attacking. The other shield that works quite well for this is the Crimson Buckler, which is the Red Ant and Might shield. This one is also a light shield, so it only fully blocks damage on a perfect block, but its perk instead of Spicy Parry is Aggressively Perfect Block. This adds 16 stabbing damage on perfect block, and the main reason that you would use this one over the other one is if you are either earlier game, or if your enemy is specifically resistant to spicy damage, because the Bomb Buckler does spicy damage. But it's worth mentioning, even things that are neutral to spicy damage, the Bomb Buckler is better due to the fact that it has the sizzle buildup as well, which is just a lot of just bonus damage. For your actual weapon, like your proper weapon in your main hand, you either want the Roach Club crafted weapon or the Pinch Whacker unique weapon. To get this weapon, you need to go to this purple can on your map in the fire pit area. East of the can on the wall is a hole. Inside of the hole is a wall that you can blow up with a bomb, and behind that wall, once you've opened it up, is a chair that has this weapon sitting on it, and you can just pick it up nice and easy. The Pinch Whacker is statistically just better than the Roach Club in every important way, and it also has a perk on it that makes it emit an AoE shock blast on the combo finisher, which is honestly just so solid in general. That's it. The main purpose of this build is on perfect blocks. We just want to have a smashing weapon in our hand for when we eventually get a stun and want to apply some damage in between the blocks. For the armor, the best one for this by far is the Snail Armor. This armor set is a little bit awkward at the immediate moment, as there are only 17 Garden Snail fragments you can get in the game, and it takes 12 of these fragments to craft the armor to begin with, and it also takes fragments to repair the armor once it's damaged. So you can make Snail Armor right now, but you cannot use it indefinitely until we have tier 3 Bust Omni Tool unlocked. Extra bonus tip for the Snail Armor is that when you upgrade armor, it refills the durability, so I recommend saving your upgrades on this armor set to use for repairs. The actual shell fragment locations then, to help you out a bit if you want to craft it, there are 3 here in this ranger station right near the statue outpost. There's 2 here on the ascent up the statue section itself. There is this hole that you can see on your map after the sort of labyrinth area Go to the hole and you can climb down to then take the pneumatic tube right through. Take a left turn when you get to the bottom and there is a cache with these fragments inside of it. The rest of the fragments are all found inside of the actual statue Ominent facility itself in the network center, which you will get to and do during the story of the game. Just make sure that you search that area properly if you want to get all the snail shell fragments inside of it. As for what snail armor actually does then, the base effect is that it makes any block apply bonus stun damage from the perk itself. You get increased threat generation as well because it is fighter armor, which of course is actually good for this because you want to be perfect blocking everything, and if you're in multiplayer this means that the actual enemy will focus on you more frequently. Then the set bonus for the snail armor is quite unique, and it's called Retaliation. What this does specifically is anytime you block an attack, you gain 1 stack of the Retaliation buff. Having any stacks of this makes your next charge attack do an AoE pop of damage around the target, as well as an extra pop of stun value too. Every stack that you gain past that, up to 5 maximum, increases the damage of the attack by 20%, as well as increasing the speed of charging the charged attack by 5% per stack as well. These stacks are used up when you actually complete the charge attack, or when combat ends. So essentially the flow is perfect block 5 times, then do a charged attack. Or if the enemy gets stunned before you've blocked 5 times, just do a charge attack anyways and just whack them while they're down. In this setup, not only will you get massive damage from these charged attacks in the openings, but you'll also be applying damage every time that you perfect block to begin with, and you'll be applying loads of bonus stun. As for the trinket that we'll be using here, nothing directly affects blocking or perfect blocks or anything like that, but the Shivering Scale trinket adds a big pop of AoE damage to your charged attacks with melee weapons. This synergizes fantastic with our Retaliation effect, because we'll be focusing on charged attacks because of that, and it also applies as fresh damage and chill buildup, specifically 25 fresh damage and 40 chill buildup, which lets you slow the enemy's movements, which then makes them easier to predict for your perfect block timing. To get this trinket, it is a random drop chance from the blue butterfly enemies in the park, and like the scorpion, you can make a blue stuffed butterfly and then rub it for luck to increase the drop chance of this trinket specifically. For your mutations in this setup, number 1 priority is Smasher. This increases stun damage buildup with smashing weapons, and at tier 3 it also increases smashing weapon damage against stun targets by 20%. This plays very well into the goals of our setup and lets us really just bash into our target when the stun happens. Then we've got the Parry Master mutation, which gives us stamina back whenever you perfect block. Pretty self-explanatory, obviously. Stamina lets us get more hits in, it lets us use our dodging ability a bit more for burst movement, and because our main goal is perfect blocks, it would just be a waste not to take this, honestly. Third priority then is Trapper Peeper if you have it unlocked. Increased critical hit damage is great, and there's not much else that affects damage in this setup that we haven't already taken. That said, final priority in most situations is Ambush, just to make your opening hits stronger on enemies nice and easily, but you can also run Cardio Fan, especially for bosses, just to give you even more leeway with your stamina. Next up then, a much sort of simpler one, but it's for all you spear-wielding fans out there, as spears are honestly a ton of fun, but very strange to actually utilize in Grounded 2 with the ways that the systems have been changed up. And as much as I absolutely adore the idea of throwing spears as your main playstyle, like only attacking by throwing them, right now there is just some buggy physics going around with thrown spears that makes them like bounce off of enemies, it makes them fly off into the distance sometimes, or even just sometimes disappear entirely. The main solution that I'm hoping they implement for this is something like what they do with arrows, where they basically stick in things that they hit, and so I will say right now, from the get-go, you should never throw a spear you actually care about because you could easily just completely lose it forever. For example, this build I'll be recommending has the unique named spear, but if you want to throw spears, never throw that one. Always throw your backup spears because you might lose the unique spear and you only get one of those per playthrough. That said, there is some armor that affects spears in a specific way that doesn't work for other melee weapons, and the Javelineer mutation is quite interesting too. So let's talk about how you can make the most out of all this. For the weapon itself, the best one is the Gloom Skewer. This is a unique named spear, and this one is found in the Toxic Anthill location. Specifically, if you go into this location and then follow it all the way to the bottom, you will find a room with a Cockroach Queen boss within it. At the back of that room is a bunch of mushrooms that you can either chop down if you have tier 2 chop, or just you can parkour up around the mushrooms and you'll find the spear laying on the wall behind them. This weapon has the best stats of any spear in the game. It has a special perk on it called Gaping Wound. This reduces enemy stabbing resistance by 10%, and I've heard somewhat mixed reports on this. Some people say that it just increases damage by 10% against any enemy with stabbing. Others say it only affects enemies that were resistant to stabbing to begin with, but I think that the important thing here is that this this is the best spear regardless, and worst case scenario of the perk, it still makes you even stronger against the things that would resist you. For the armor on this one, you could technically go with snail armor once again because charged attacks are relevant to this, and snail is honestly pretty universally strong for melee weapons especially, but I'd say for spears there is a better option, at least for pure offense, and this is the grub armor set. Specifically, the reason for this is that it has the ranger armor perk. This increases damage up to weak points, which isn't a bow exclusive effect, so we can still take advantage of that extra 5% damage per piece, and that makes it 15% total bonus. The perk on the armor set itself is called Quick Charge. This speeds up the charging attack animation by 5% per armor piece, so a total of 15% faster charge attacks to have all three of these armor pieces on. Then the set bonus for having all three pieces of grub armor equipped is Lone Ranger. This boosts damage with bows and spears by 10%. As a result, this set is actually quite good as a mix set where you can also swap to using bows, because they of course also benefit from the ranger armor effect, they benefit from the faster charging effect, and the set bonus does affect them too, so you can still get the strongest spear set with what is essentially the second strongest bow set and use them at the same time. For the trinket, we're going to be grabbing the Shivering Scale once again, which we talked about earlier. This is a random chance drop from the blue butterfly enemies, and it also adds a big frosty pop of AoE damage to your charged attacks with melee weapons. This also applies some chill buildup on it too, which is quite useful for slowing your enemies down. That said, before we move forward, I do recommend making a shield as well, as spears are one-handed weapon, which leaves your offhand open. Sometimes you might want a torch, but the rest of the time you may as well have a shield just to help you out with survival. The main downside of this build is that it has really low defense because it's using a tier 1 armor set, but that sort of plays into the Javelineer mutation and how it works, which we'll talk about in a moment. However, if you want the survivability to offset this, make the Lady Guard shield, or use the unique named variant of the shield. But the unique version just gives you buggy healing on perfect block, which isn't that crazy. And that said, this is just a heavy shield. This means it blocks all damage taken, even without a perfect block, so long as you have the stamina to do so. And this makes it an incredible pairing for the setup, which is otherwise pretty squishy. Then we have the mutations in this. Javelineer is a given, increased damage on thrown spears whenever you do choose to throw them, 10% more damage per tier of the mutation you have unlocked for a total of 30% at max ranks. You also get a cool effect called Thorns, where after you hit an enemy with a spear for the next 5 seconds, any damage you take will be reflected back to that enemy that hit you. It's also worth mentioning that the way that this works, blocking attacks does not reflect the damage back. It is literally any damage that happens to your health bar is what gets reflected back, and it obviously doesn't lower your damage taken despite being called a damage reflect. At tier 1, this is 100% damage reflected. At tier 2, it's 150% of the damage reflected, and at tier 3, it is 200% of the damage reflected, which is actually quite a fun concept and can do quite a bit of damage to the more dangerous things if you happen to get hit, which to be honest most of the time you don't want to. Once you reach tier 3 of the mutation though, you also get this bonus perk, which makes charged attacks with spears do 30% bonus damage, and this is the big sort of thing that really helps out general spear combat. And unfortunately, yeah, you do have to unlock the whole mutation to get to it, because otherwise a lot of our setup is based around charged attacks, and the first 2 tiers of the mutation don't help with charged attacks at all. That said, if you have tier 3, this becomes your highest priority mutation to have on. Second priority is Frenzy. This one is unlocked after you completed the currently available story missions, but the actual effect that you gain from this is a buff when you hit enemies that increases your melee damage by 20% and gives you some slight health regeneration for 5 seconds, but while it's active you cannot perfect block. Since we are using the Lady Guard shield, however, perfect block is just unnecessary, you don't need to, and so we can just get the full benefit of the buff to Frenzy without the major downside from it, which makes our spear even more formidable. Third priority, I would argue, is Cardio Fan for stamina management, especially to maintain our ability to block every attack safely. And then the final slot is essentially personal choice. If you are choosing to also use a bow in this setup, you could take the Sharpshooter mutation. You could instead take the Ambush mutation for that first hit damage increase, especially with thrown spears, because they can be quite meaty in that way. Or for longer encounters, the best choice is Trapper Peeper, if you have it unlocked, for the generally increased crit damage. Final build of the day is a multiplayer specific build, or at least that's where it is best used, and this is all focused around the Red Ant armor set. This armor set has the Rogue armor perk, so increased crit chance on combo finishers with melee weapons. It also has attack stamina Ant. This reduces the stamina cost of attacks that are done with Ant-based weaponry, which is sort of a neat bonus. But the real juice of this is the hidden set bonus on the Red Ant set, which is called Strength in Numbers. What this does is give you a damage bonus for each ally that is within 10 10 centimeters of you, because for tiny 10 centimeters is actually a reasonably fair radius for actual combat considerations. This is a 6.5% damage increase for each nearby ally up to 3 stacks. This means the maximum bonus is 19.5% damage increase, which is absolutely not bad, but it does mean that you need to have 3 allies nearby to reach that strength. It's worth noting your buggy counts as 1 ally, so for any area that buggies can't be in, you can still get 1 stack of this buff solo, or for multiplayer you only need 1 other player and then their buggy as well to reach full buff. But anywhere where buggies aren't allowed to go to, you would need a full 4-player party just to get the full buff effect in. That said, the fun part is that every player can use this full armor set at the same time and all get this buff equally to each other, but that's up to you if you all want to do that. As for the weapon to pair with this, there are 2 unique weapons I'll be recommending, but it's worth mentioning that you can get a unique weapon only once per save. So considering this is a multiplayer focused build, only 1 player on the server can use each of these weapons with this armor set. The first is the Pinch Whacker. I talked about this earlier in the perfect block build section of this video, as it's just an extremely strong weapon in general that can be used with a shield or with offhand options. The other one though, and the main one I'll be recommending really, is the Crimson Avenger. This is one of the best statted options for one-handed weapons in the game. It is another unique named weapon, and this one is an ant part based weapon, so unlike the Pinch Whacker, which isn't ant part based, this does benefit from the ant weapon stamina cost reduction from the armor set. This one is found in the Spider Den Anthill in the Pine Hills area. The fastest route to it is from the southern entrance of this hill on your map. Just follow this path straight forward to this crunchable wall right here, crunch it down, and then get into the big wooden memorial box. In the wad of gum that's in the corner of the box, if you dig through it with a tier 2 shovel omni tool, you can then get the weapon to drop right out of it and pick it up for yourself. It's worth mentioning as well that this weapon does have the Spider Criticals perk, which gives you an extra 5% crit chance on all attacks against spider enemies, which is pretty solid when you are fighting those enemies. For the trinket on this one, your main goal is lots and lots of attacks, so my main 2 recommendations are for general combat, the Volatile Capacitor, which we did talk about earlier. This is the one that you unlock a recipe for at Brain Power level 9. It adds flat shock damage to every hit, and it also has an AoE shock effect on charged attacks against orc enemies too. The alternative to this is against anything weak to spicy damage at all. The Blistering Boiler Trinket is awesome in this setup. This trinket makes your combo finisher with melee weapons cause a big AoE pop of spicy damage and sizzle buildup, which is simply a lot of bonus damage against anything that is weak to spicy. This trinket is random drop chance from Bombardier Beetles. Earlier random drop trinkets, you can increase the drop chance by making a stuffed Bombardier Beetle and then rubbing it for luck before going out to kill them. As well, seeing as both of the weapons that I recommended are one-handed, you can make yourself any shield of your choosing, with my general highest recommendation being the Lady Guard shield, just because it lets us use the Frenzy mutation without any real danger. For your mutations then on this one, you want either Blade Master or Smasher, depending on which weapon you chose, or technically this can work with any weapon, and so whichever fighting style matches the choice of weapon that you made. Past that, you will want the Frenzy mutation, simply because when mixed with the Lady Guard shield, there's no real downside to it, which makes it quite strong, and you get all of the upside of the healing, the increased melee attack damage, so it's really hard to say no to. Third up is Cardio Fan, because stamina management is great, especially when you are relying on Lady Guard blocking, and then fourth priority is just straight up Trapper Peeper if you have it unlocked for the general critical damage increase. That just about does it for today, and everyone. Another 5 powerful and fun builds in Grounded 2's early access, and I honestly can't wait until they add more equipment and mutations to the game to mess around with and stick together in fun ways. If you guys have any ideas for fun builds that we haven't talked about yet, feel free to leave them down below, but I hope you enjoy using these for yourself if you try them out in your own game. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.